When Jim asked me to demonstrate today, I was thinking, I've never done a demonstration. So you guys, if you don't feel like guinea pigs, well, you should, because this is the first effort. I've never done one. And I was thinking, well, I'll just come on up to Denton, because nobody that I know and nobody from the club that I go to will be there. And so if I crash and burn, then it won't be known. And what happens? I get here, Sharon, Dick, come on. So, but you got to be quiet. Okay. As Jim said, I've always turned large stuff and got into that. But occasionally we would have the typical family Christmas or something like that, and I'd want to do a small piece. And a piece like Jim is showing there, he does them faster than I do now, but you're into 40 hours, and that's spread over a year. So you want to think a little, it's a tough piece to give to a neighbor just because they gave you a beer one day. And in fact, I don't have one. We don't keep any at the house. They all go straight to the gallery. And the weed pot thing, I had read an article, and this is would you believe, this is March, April 1987. And there's a guy named Rude Osolnik, and I'm sure a lot of the guys that have been doing this for a while will recognize that name. But Rude Osolnik was certainly one of the deans of turning. He passed away not too terribly long ago, I understand. He was really well known for his candlestick holders. And if you can find a Rude Osolnik candlestick holder for less than, I don't know what the going rate is, but I think you will pay dearly for one these days. But he was also a proponent of weed pots. So I read the article. Now he does it differently than I do, but the theme is the same. And what I've been to a lot of demonstrations, some of them good, some of them not as good, and it seems like there's two kinds of demonstrations. One is you see just a master, a Jimmy Clue, somebody that gets up there and he starts with a blank piece of wood, and he comes up with a finished product that it's just amazing. And there's tool handling, and there's die handling, and there's finishes, there's all these things, and it's so effortless done, so it entertains totally. And of course, if I had to go back to my shop and do that, I'd get rid of my lathe tomorrow, because I just don't have that skill level. And that's so the weed pot, one of the endearing things that I kind of like about it is you need one tool, maybe two. I like to use two, but one tool is what you need. So if you only have one gouge, a bowl gouge, a good bowl gouge, and you don't need multiple sizes. You don't need a fancy grind. Whatever grind you like, it's going to work for you. That's all you need. As far as the lathe itself, a mini lathe is fine. You don't need a big lathe. You don't need a big investment. A chuck is nice, but you can do it without a chuck. You do it more like Rude Osolnik does it, because he didn't use a chuck. So what I wanted to do, and when I started doing these weed pots, and this was a couple of years ago, after I'd been doing large vessels for probably 12, 13 years, is the first weed pot only took me a day and a half, because I just couldn't figure out, I couldn't get started. I couldn't figure out what is it you do. And so I needed a strategy, so to say. And so the strategy that I adopted is this. And this is something we can pass around. But this is what I call the blank, or the rough. And so you can take any log, and on the way home tonight, you'll probably pass by several out at curbside if there's been tree cutters in the area. And I enjoy getting my wood that way. The only thing that gives me more pleasure is to sneak into the neighbor's backyard and get some off his wood pile. But this is what I do is the first thing you do. You don't even have to round it out. It can be like this one right here. You just start off with I mean, that's about as plain as you're going to get. And then what I do is I turn that into this. So you'll see it's got several things going for it. One end has got a tenon for a chuck, and it's got a 1.5 inch hole. And the reason it's got a 1.5 inch hole is because I happen to have a 1.5 inch Forstner bit. If I had a 1 3/4 inch foot, I'd be touting the virtues of that. But 1.5 is what I have. And then I'll just drill a hole and do a chamfer right here because it's really the last chance I have at a chamfer. So the process is you put the wood on the lathe, and of course, first and foremost, the most important tool that you're ever going to have is something, and I'm just going to use the pith on this one, and I'll be a little off pith with that one right there. Whoop. So you put it on, and voila, you have and I've never used one of these lathes before, so, wow. Okay. And it's a good thing to get it tight enough where it won't come off, especially, okay. But I like to get them tight. I'm normally putting 300-pound logs on a lathe, and so 300, 350 pounds. When they come off, you have a problem. And I've only had that happen twice. But it does get your attention. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare this part way, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to, everybody to be sitting around watching me doing a bunch of tool changing and drilling a hole and all the kind of stuff, because basically this is about form. But I'm going to pass this around. I'm going to keep this up here because I'm going to be using it directly. But this will give you kind of an idea the way you prepare it. And another thing that I would say you may want to note is, and I'm wanting to address this largely to guys that may not have been turning a long time. How many have a bandsaw here? Raise your hands. How many don't? Is there anybody that doesn't have a bandsaw? Oh, okay. I don't. So I don't have a bandsaw. I got rid of the darn thing. And so to cut out those really nice, perfect blanks is a wonderful thing. But I don't bandsaw anything out. Now, another type of demonstration is when somebody's trying to sell something. And so I'm not really trying to sell anything, but I will say that I've got this new clamping system, and for $10 that y'all can order these. Jim will take the money, and we can, and you can just kind of run down and we'll fill the orders tonight. That's not a problem.
Are you turning dry or wet wood?
This is wet. And weed pots, the thing about a weed pot is, and I'll pass this one around. This is a better one to pass around. This is the finished product here. What is characteristic of weed pot is they are solid. They are not hollowed out. So they're meant to be solid. They're meant to crack a little bit. It's something that you go out and get a dandelion and put a dandelion in and call it a day. It is not supposed to be something that is a work of art that you agonize over. It's something you can feel really, really good about giving to a neighbor that you don't particularly like. So, hey, I'm all over that. Okay, so I think I just turned a knob. What do I do? Pull on. Push off. Ah. Okay. I'm turning, another thing I will warn you about is the guys, especially the spindle turners here, and my feelings about spindle turners and versus what we do is spindle turners are where the expertise is. Those are the guys that really know tool handling. So you will probably see some mistakes. And but I turn slow. I am not, there's guys that will crank these things up to 2,000 RPMs, 1,500 RPMs, and for a piece this size, that works. But when you're turning big pieces like that, the side comes around. If you're turning 400 RPMs, even though the outside is moving much, much quicker, the piece is going at the same speed. And I'm used to working at 300 and 400, topping out maybe 450 or 500, and that's why I still have my teeth, because you can get hurt. And especially with mistletoe burl mesquite. Have you ever brought a piece of mistletoe burl up here? Mistletoe burl will get you, and there was a lady in Arizona that she had major cranial surgery resulting from it. I think she finally died of it, and it was not. And I've had a piece of mistletoe burl mesquite come apart on me, and when it does, it's just like a hand grenade. So it's a very scary occurrence. So you want to. So I turn slow. And I'm gonna, even though I'm turning smaller pieces these days, or not, I'm still turning the big pieces, but I still want to, as I turn these small ones, I'm going to stay with what I got. And the only reason I bought several gouges here is because I didn't want to spend any time sharpening. One gouge is all you need. Okay, so.
Do you always use the long handles?
Pardon me?
Do you always use the long handles? Because I know you do big stuff, so you have to have long handles.
Sort of, but I made these handles 15 years ago, and I bought these hose clamps 15 years ago, and that's just because I have some short ones here. This is what I use on 1/2 inch. But this is a 5/8, and so a little bit more weight is fine. Now, a lot of you may do rounding with a roughing gouge. I don't think there's anything wrong with a roughing gouge, except if I've gotten in trouble turning, it's been with a roughing gouge, and I stopped using them over 10 years ago. So they scare me. So I'm going to need to raise this up. I use and I know, Dick, you probably know the guy, but you know James Johnson, don't you?
Yeah.
James Johnson does all my tool rest. And so this is the first time I've used a non-James Johnson tool rest. So I'll try to, it's a bigger and a little bit more massive, and you can hide your hands behind it. And so when a roughly chainsawed piece is flying around and it's 22 inches in diameter, it's good to have something to hide behind, because again, big pieces can snatch up parts of one's anatomy from time to time, and it's always disappointing. Okay. You know, and actually I did bring that, so thank you. That's why you need guys that know what they're doing on the front row, because, but anyway, I'm not going to really finish this out. But there's no reason that you can't. Okay. Now, with this one, what I'll go ahead and do, and like I say, a piece of PVC, 1-inch PVC around here would be kind of okay. But I rarely use a face shield. I've just gotten to where they kind of aim them away from me. Sometimes when they're coming right at me, I'll put it on. Yeah, and well. Okay, let's see, make sure that will cover. We're turning it at about 500 RPMs, which, again, I'm now, and then what I'll typically do is I can pull out my trusty parting tool, and I'll create a tenon.
That log has got some end checking in it. Would you try to waste that away? End checking in there?
It'll probably most of it'll get wasted away, but again, doing weed pots, I don't worry too much about checking and things like that. It's gonna crack. Huh?
Giving it to somebody you don't care about anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like you take a look at your piece over there, or you take a look at any of my pieces, I don't care where they are, and you're gonna find cracks. Cracks is something you can't get a big piece of wood. You can't go through all that it goes through and not have any cracks. And if you discard it because it developed a few cracks, you're in trouble. So I don't. Okay. Now I'm not going to go any further on this piece right here, because what I'll do is I'll do the same thing on this other end, true up, create a tenon, and then the next step, after I get both ends prepared that way, it will go in a chuck. The Forstner bit goes in first, and I'll put the Forstner bit in about an inch, about a half inch. I'll bury the head a little bit, but I don't want it to go too deep, because what I want it to do, I want the 3/4 inch drive to be recessed in, but I want to give myself a 1/4 of an inch margin, because when I cut the base, I can cut the base that way, and I can cut it just wherever I need to cut it after I do the final cut, and it comes out with the design looking good, and I don't have to worry about burying my tool in a spinning drive. So that's kind of nice. So this is basically the base. So I'll do a piece like this, both sides, and I'll wind up with a piece like this. So there you have the 1.5 inch Forstner, and I'll do a chamfered entry right here, because usually the entrances in most of my pieces that you see right here have a bit of a chamfer, and that way I can I don't have to worry about working in a tool that's next to the drive. I prefer not to work on a chuck any more than I have to. I'm not a real chuck fan. So that allows me just to stay with a spur drive. So what I'm going to do now, no need to finish that out, is because the Forstner bit has a nice little hole, nice little point at the end, it just really works out good to, there we go. And whoops. Where is the gizmo? Here it is. I guess gizmo is good on that. Another kind of a thought on weed pot, and again, I don't know how many of y'all do this, but no matter what you do, what instrument you play, you gotta play a few scales every now and then. You need to practice. And I know of no better way than to practice tool handling and also to start looking at form. There's a lot of really great wood turners from a tool handling standpoint. And you know what? Form is always it's a difficult subject. And in fact, Jim and I continually have the conversation of what rubbish we've turned out. And it's just, you do it, you look at it, and what's wrong with this piece? You know, two months, you know, maybe a week later or something, you're still looking at it. And one of the beauties of this particular setup is I can put it right back on the lathe and I can recut it and I can see if I improved it. So I can keep refining it. I'll put this next to one like this. This one is a little bit more weighted, goes up a little. In fact, let me put it out here. Here I am talking behind you here. Let's look at the two of those. This one is a more bottom weighted. This one comes up, has more of that onion look. So which do you prefer? Well, I don't know which I prefer. You know, we should just,
One on the left. No.
This one?
Our left, yes.
Okay.
Whichever you want, Joe.
I wanted you to say the other one.
One on our right might be improved if you cut it down. If you look at the ratio from the width to the height, there's the golden mean of the 1.61, and just using my fingers here, you've got almost a 2 on the lighter colored one there versus the other one much closer to a 1.5.
And you know the golden mean, I think is what you call that. I hear you. But also there's some forms out there that I kind of like, and one is again, to share a conversation we had a little earlier. One of the things that I really like is a wine decanter. You know, that form, that very bottom and then long. To me, that's an attractive form. Now, it violates a lot of rules, but it's an attractive form. So, but the bottom line is you get a lot of good opportunity to see what you like, recut it, see what it does, and keep working on that refinement. And I think that pays off after a while in other work that you do. At least it has with me, for sure. And another thing doing this is, I got to tell you, I still get a kick. I don't care whether it's a large log or what it is, but getting something as homely as this thing right here and making something of value, even if it's to a neighbor you don't like. So, and then also on some of your finish work, if you do dry the wood, you'll see that this particular piece of walnut right here is slathered with a lot of black epoxy. And we tend to use a lot of epoxy in what we do because, again, you're going to get cracks. And so what I did with this is after I finished it, it sat for a while, it got a few little cracks, so I rubbed in the epoxy, and I'll turn this off. And it'll come out real nice looking. And if you don't, I guess if somebody really objects to cracks, then they should be buying glass or something like that. Pardon me?
They don't have to be your neighbor anymore.
So as you see, this one is very off balance, and that's something I'm fairly comfortable with. Another thing that to consider is if you'll notice how far the drive is recessed, you'll notice how far the live center is recessed. Something pretty drastic would have to happen for this thing to come off. You start putting it on a chuck, especially you start cantilevering it out with only a chuck, and it can come off. And again, to the problem of the people on the front row. So, let's see if I'm going to turn this up just a teeny bit. Whoa, we don't want to shake the lathe too much. My I have a one-way 24-24, and it weighs a little over 800 pounds. And even at 800 pounds, and I have it, first thing you'll notice when you come to my shop is that the spindle height is about right here. So I'm up on a platform, so I stand at about the same height as I'm at right now, and I guess I ought to put this on. But and that's from the way I hollow. I want the spindle height high. I'll stand flat-footed on the floor when I do my hollowing. But so it's up on 7 stacks of 2x8 or 2x10s, I guess, coming down each way, and then I've got long lag bolts fastening to the lathe, which gives it because of the platform I'm going out, it's on a much bigger footing. And one of the nice things about that is I leave them a little bit loose, because if I'm that much off balance, I want to feel it. I want it to start shaking. I've heard, I don't know that it's anybody that's happened to, but when you bolt a lathe to the floor, it just really settles it down until it comes loose all at one time, and then you don't want to be in the neighborhood. So, well, I can't go any faster. Okay. Hello. This is, like I say, I'm used to a particular tool rest height. So let me see if that's a little more like home there. I can't tell whether I'm slowing the lathe down or if I'm slipping. That was a slip. Pardon me?
Just got out of tailstock spindle there.
Just out of curiosity, does anybody here turn weed pots on a regular basis? In between masterpieces? Okay. One of the things I found most difficult getting into quote-unquote weed pots was that doing spindle turning, you do some different styles of cutting. Then I very much, whoa, let's not go too far. Calm down. All right. I'm a big one for the, what I call the, I guess you call it a pull cut. Now there's no reason why we just can't go ahead and start shaping this thing. Pardon me?
Are you gonna put it in a chuck?
Put it in a chuck?
Or are you going to?
No, that
You're through with the chuck.
actually the reason I recessed it like that was so I won't have to go to a chuck.
So you just needed the chuck for
To hold it for the drilling,
Okay.
and to hold it for the end work. Because if I can't use, I try to, even when I'm using a chuck, and I rarely use a chuck. Now you've seen the tall pieces I do, the tall mesquites. I'll use a chuck then because I'm using a steady rest. But if I'm going to be between centers, look how nice and small, and you're not going to get your knuckles hurt with that. And I can't tell you how many times I've stuck my fingers in a chuck and it hurt just as much the 10th time as it did on the 8th time. You know, I mean, you'd think you'd learn. I don't really want that. That makes me nervous. Okay. Besides, the bark is pretty well gone. So, just out of curiosity, who has many lathes here? Got both? And 16s, or how many guys have the big 24s or something like that? So there's, yeah. This is thrilling stuff, isn't it? Oh, boy. Hello. Let's see, what I need to do is I need to back off of this thing a little bit. Yeah, that's not going to work. How many of y'all, does anybody here have James Johnson tool rest? Anybody use a James Johnson? They're great, aren't they? Would you use anything else?
Yeah.
You would?
I use both. I mean, I like the one like you've got there. I like mine's a little bit. I like the hard bar.
And the only advertisement I was going to do is on my way to hold the tool in the handle, which, again, those are, place your orders now. But another thing that, how many here use D-Way gouges? You like them? D-Way. D-Way, which is all of these are D-Way. D-Way doesn't use the powdered steel that you see in the Thompsons and the one-way. They use M42, which is the same steel that you use in end mills. So. Is it a no-no to adjust the tool rest when it's running? No. Okay, good. And then for the old. Something's taking shape here. Not sure what it is, but another thing that, and again, I've had a lot of fun doing weed pots as such instead of the bigger stuff that I normally do, because doing big pieces or doing small pieces or whatever you're doing, you get into, we're right-handed. A lot of us are right-handed, right? And you get into a particular way to do this. What do you do when you got to do this? I mean, when you got to do a push cut with your left hand.
Got to be ambidextrous.
And you got to work on that. That's not something that comes natural. And so this is a great place to work on your ambidextrousness. Is that a good word? Ambidextrousness?
That will work. We knew it.
Let's see.
I'm walking through your hole, like the hole for the stem of the weed.
With this one, I went pretty much all the way. When Trent Bosch came through, he had an interesting tool that I kind of went off the deep end for, and that was, have you ever used a gun drill?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a friend of mine is he's bought a welding rig, and he just loves to do stuff. So I went and bought a bunch of gun drills, and boy, he fixed them up, and they really work kind of neat. I'm still getting the hang of them. On this particular piece, I'll tell myself there is a plug in the end because I went all the way through with the gun drill. And of course what you do is I try to drill a pilot hole, and then I will I'll get the thing and it's straight in. Then I wear a face mask because that stuff comes out really, really hard. Because what you do is you got 80, 90 pounds of air going in through the gun drill, and it can get real painful. But so this right now we still have our little problems, and something that, and in fact I didn't bring any. Jim was asking me what I forgot a couple of years ago, and believe it or not, it's been having Jim as a student has had its rewards, and we have both learned what not to do. And but one of the things that you get into form. What is, you want that parabolic, you want that decreasing radius. You don't want a flat anywhere in the, it's got to be right. And I think as people, there's something in our DNA, and I don't care if you were home on the range all your life. When you see something, you know if it's right, and you know if it's wrong, and so those continuous flowing curves, I think, just agree with us. There's just something innate in who we are, and in days of old, when I say days of old, believe it or not, they used to build boats before there were computers. Now I know that's hard to believe, but they still have some of the old Viking ships and some of the old ships that they've dug up. They find very clean, flowing, exacting lines. So really well, how do they do that? If anybody here has ever messed with boat building, to lay those planks on but still know what the sweep of the gunnel is going to be, that is tough stuff. And so boat builders, and they still do this, in a boat building barn, they would have a loft, and they would have something they did call lofting. And lofting is when you have battens. Now, battens might be, for a guy that's building lobster boats, might be 30 feet long. And they might be maybe that wide and maybe an eighth of an inch thick, but they're Sitka spruce that he meticulously shaves down, and it gets just right because it won't take an unfair curve. When you bend that, and you can put points on it and whatnot, and you can stretch it and do all sorts of crazy things with it, but it won't take an unfair curve. It will make a nice OG, it will do a S, it will do this, but it won't get unfair. It will stay true to the fair curve principle. And so what you found, the insert to a Honda windshield wiper, right?
Yeah, that was suggested at SWAT by somebody.
Oh, I thought there's probably somebody around here that was wondering where their windshield wipers went.
Inserts, they'll make windshield wiper blade, all sorts of things, plastic pieces of plastic, piano wire, or the wire.
Yeah, I was using the piano wire there for a while. We were messing with, what do you call it?
Mardi Gras beads.
Pardon me? Mardi Gras beads, yeah.
Chain, any sort of chain will hang into a fair curve.
Yes. And you call that catenary, right. And so we were playing with those, trying, how do you transfer a catenary to a piece like that? Well, that's tough. That's a difficult thing to do. But you can get a little piece of veneer, and you can stretch it along, and it'll show you where the bumps are, it'll show you where the hollows are, and you can keep messing with it because you don't have anything invested. I mean, this was roadside stuff. And so you can keep it until you get it right. And the kick you get out of getting it right is just like when you're finishing out a big piece like that. It's right. And there's something to be said for that. Okay, I'll make a few more cuts here, and then I don't need to really. I still have a hard time with the push cut because I'm so used to always doing well, it's too big a gouge. But you get the idea. And well, let me just go ahead and do a few more cuts, and then we'll call it. It's almost 8 o'clock. And Jim said he wanted me done by 8. Another thing that you'll notice doing these is you start looking at it and going, we kind of have an apple look to it now. But we have a little bit of, it's kind of not very nice right here. So and I'm going to use another gouge. Just out of curiosity, how many people prefer the 3/8 gouge? Yeah. You can only cut so much, and there's something about a 3/8 gouge, and on big pieces like that, I'll use a 3/8 gouge more than I'll use anything else. But then again, unlike bowl turners, what you're kind of working inside a bowl, and you get an extension over the tool rest, and so big gouges are kind of nice. But when you're doing like we do, you're always got the tool rest pretty close to where you're working, and you don't need that kind of beef. And so a 3/8 gouge is so much nicer to use. And you know what? It's cheaper. Now, I can't make my... I could refine this for another hour or so and play with it. Now, of course, nobody would be hanging around to watch. But that's pretty much it. One other question: who all uses CBN wheels here? If you don't, and if you're kind of sometimes struggling with sharpening, your turning would you agree that your turning took a jump upwards when you went to CBN immediately? Just, I mean, like overnight? Huh?
The sharpening was easier.
Well, not only the sharpening easier, but you wind up with sharper. And you wind up with more, and it's just, and you sharpen less. So, I mean, it goes just like that. And you're not dressing wheels all the time with all that mess. Again, Jim told me that there'd be a lot of newbies here, perhaps, and maybe there are, but if you your turning will take a step up when you go to CBN wheels, and I'm not selling those. So, now the clamps, we still got a deal on clamps. In fact, the price has been reduced, and we can make that happen. Are there any questions? Yeah.
I've seen people make something similar to that, and you can buy glass tubes, much like a
Yes.
tube,
Yep.
to put in it so you can put a real hosey in it with water.
Yeah. Well, probably with these, you could put a little epoxy in and do water just as well, and if it comes apart, big deal. It's not like it. But a glass tube, I've seen that as well, and I think it would work pretty well. It'd be kind of a nice touch. Although for a weed, yeah. Now, you can call these several things. Some people call it twig pots. My wife calls it a palm vase, because the palms that you get on Palm Sunday. So these really make a nice little presentation for a lot of palms sticking out. And she's got a weed pot that I did probably 12 years ago over at Jimmy's shop, and I know some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's still there in the house. It's just as ugly as a mud fence, but it's got the palms in it, and it really looks kind of cool. Yes, sir.
You probably mentioned it, and I just skipped it or didn't catch it. When did you put in your initial bevel going in on your top? When did you put that in?
I put that in when it's on the chuck. What I'll do is
It's on the chuck.
when it's on the chuck, yeah, because I don't know that I have to, but if you look at it right now, if I'm wanting to do that, I got a little bit of a problem.
Okay, so you did at one point mount on a chuck then. After you end up putting two tenons on, you put a chuck on it and then put the gold one in.
Do you want to show this?
Yeah, so again, with this,
You add a chuck on the other end on it. All right.
yeah,
I thought you
because
didn't use the chuck at all. I thought.
what I'll do is, like at the little neighborhood that I live in, we'll have, hey, 1st of May festival, right? And what I'll do is I'll turn a dozen weed pots or something like that and give it to the neighbors, just kind of a nice little touch. What I'll do is I'll set up with this drive, and I'll turn all my tenons on a whole bunch of logs. Just get them down just exactly like I turned the end of this one. And then what I'll do is I'll put the chuck on, and I'll have the 1/2-inch Forstner bit on. I'll chuck it up, drill the 1.5-inch hole. Go to the next one, drill the 1.5-inch hole, go through it. And then on the next, I'll go ahead and poke maybe a 1/4-inch hole or something, because with a gun drill, it's a little hard to start. It's not a real easy tool to use. But anyway, I'll get that hole done, and then the last thing, while it's on the chuck and there's no tailstock involved, I'll go ahead and take that out. And a lot of times I'll sand it. I'll go ahead and put a finish a sanded finish on this little chamfer right here if I know that's the way I want to go. And then, who knows, I may wind up changing my mind on the design and have a stemless type. And that was all for naught, but it's not a big deal.
And you never really finish the bottom?
Huh?
You never really finish the bottom? Where you drill your hole, you never really get in there, you just leave it as is? Where your spur job is now, the 1.5 inch hole, you never. You finish the bottom, you don't finish the bottom, do you?
No, no. I mean, it's finished. Yeah, that's the beauty of weed pots. You know, when you're talking finish, I'm goofy about finishing. Let me tell you, we spend a lot of hours on finishing. On these, I'm not going to get all that goofy about it. I mean, you know, you turn a nice little part. Now, on that one, like I passed around, and this is a good example right here. On a nice piece of walnut, and especially one that's fairly dry that will hold some finish. This has got General Finishes gel on it. To my way of thinking, a piece of walnut requires a little bit of warming up. Texas walnut tends to be a little on the purplish, little on the cold side, and so a little bit of warmth will get it. And so I'll use the that dark walnut gel and just put a real thin film on it, wipe it off, go back with the clear, and you get a nice finish. Now, it's not nice like that, but then again, if you put that finish on this, it would look terrible. There's times that you don't really need the quote-unquote big finish, as we call it.
That's green coming off the blade, you let it sit a while or just finish it up?
You can't really finish. Well, I'll let it sit a while because I do like to sand them before I give them out. And because, you know, right now, you know, try as I might, it's still going to have some tool marks. And green wood does not sand worth a darn, especially a wood like this pecan, or if you're doing a maple, or let's say you have some hackberry or something like that, and it's miserable sand. You know, it just doesn't work. So you have to let it dry just a little bit. But this is a solid piece of wood. It's going to crack. And so as you'll see, like with this piece right here, it's got, hello. You know, it's going to have a little bit of a bark inclusion. And so if it gets a few cracks in here, you know, it really doesn't hurt it that much. It's not supposed to be a gallery piece. This is not something that you're going to, again, put on eBay and get the big bucks for. This is something to give to a neighbor that you don't like very much. Now, with this one right here, somebody you like would get this one right here. But, you know, we gotta be discriminating.
I brought one today.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So how long would you let that piece dry before you finish it off, sanding it and then putting your finish in?
I haven't been doing these long enough where I can, again, I probably a few weeks and just try and see what happens. It happens every time. And on about the 10th time, I finally figured it out. You know, you don't do that. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.